always seek to understand first. So as you come into as a leader in a new organization, working with new leaders and leaders change, I always try to put my ego aside, what I know aside, and actually just seek to understand what are their goals for their team. What would they like to accomplish? How do they see our team helping them? And just really seeking to understand how your team can help. You do have to, of course, not be afraid to speak up and offer solutions.
What's going on, everybody? It's Morgan J. Ingram here, host of the SDR Chronicles, bringing you motivational tips and tactics for your sales development journey, and also for your entrepreneurial journey, as I believe that sales development is the mantra and centerpiece of your career and also as your life, as we use it every single day. And today's guest, super excited about this one, Christy from ReturnPath. She is the Director of Sales Development over there. Previously, she's worked at Salesforce Marketing Cloud and also worked at ExactTarget. She has a massive amount of knowledge in sales leadership. And I'm really excited to bring her today because this topic is something that we've never touched on the show before. And I believe it's actually something that you actually use once you get in your leadership position. And it is how to get executive buy-in. And this really means that how do you talk to management when you really need something done and you can't do it yourself and you need someone else to sign off for you and you need that support. So I'm going to have Christy introduce herself a little bit further and why she's excited about the topic today.
Yeah, thanks, Morgan. Thanks for having me. Again, I'm Christy Weymouth. I'm with ReturnPath. And as Morgan said, I started the sales development team at ExactTarget many years ago. So if you haven't heard of ExactTarget, we were a small startup from Indianapolis, and we were passionate about email marketing, and we helped email marketers grow through the years, enough so that we were acquired by Salesforce in June of 2013. So I started in March of 2005. I actually started as an inbound representative. And it's kind of funny because I had done a lot of leadership prior to that, but in different industries. So I was a district manager in retail. I had worked up my ranks in consumer electronics, had worked there for 7 years, knew that industry was evolving and I wanted to make the transition into tech. And so I actually was doing direct sales, selling jewelry at home parties. And my plan was, I think this is important just to talk about what got me into tech and got me passionate about business development. But I started this jewelry sales business as a direct sales rep because I loved the product, number one, believed in it. Two, I knew I could meet influential women in Indianapolis that would probably be the launching pad to my next career. And that's exactly what happened. So I had met the VP of marketing from ExactTarget at a jewelry party. She was a customer of mine twice. And she said, you need to come work for me. So I was making a brand new transition into tech, had my MBA, had led teams, global positions. And, I was going from a 63,000 global worldwide company to a company with less than 100 employees in a new industry. And so I thought, what the heck? I went for the interviewed with her and others, and just was really impressed with the vision for the company. Had met with a couple of their VC partners, and was just really interested in where this company could go, and took the chance. So I started in inbound. Did that for about 3 months, and then raised my hand and said, probably I should be doing more. What else?
Time to do more.
Yeah, I could do more. I've led a lot of teams. I have my MBA. Right. I have definite thoughts on what we could be doing here. And they were like, great. We've never had anybody do outbound and do it well.
Right.
And so I thought, what the heck? So I just researched everything I could, which at that time, there was not much out there. Right? We're talking 2005. So, awesome that people like yourself have taken such an interest, and it's grown to be its own discipline in sales development. So anyway, long story short, led that team to be a global team. And we were acquired by Salesforce in June of 2013. I stayed there for a few more years. And then I came to ReturnPath. It'll be 3 years in February. To do it all over again. So right now I lead a 14-person global team. 8 of us are based here in Indianapolis with me, servicing North America. And then I have 6 others that are out in region with their sales team doing business development.
Awesome. No, that's a great journey. Raising your hand is super important when you want to do more. Don't wait for the opportunity, go after it. I think that's a good story that everyone definitely needs to understand and hear about. And, the topic is, how do you get executive buy-in? So my very first question is, what does executive buy-in mean to you and how do you earn it?
Yeah, executive buy-in to me, that's critical, right? So what does it mean to me? It means that the company can't meet its vision without me and the team this year.
Right.
So I want that type of accountability. I want them to believe that what we produce and know what we produce is going to help us achieve our revenue goals. And so I think if you can't answer that with confidence, that could be an issue.
Yeah, that definitely can be an issue. And you do have to have confidence in yourself and what you're trying to present. And I think sometimes people don't have as much confidence in themselves because maybe that they're new to that position. So they're not necessarily ready to be like, okay, this is what we should do, because they're still trying to learn and absorb what's going on within the organization.
Yeah. So I think, there's some things that you can do, like before, if they're considering for you the role or you're raising your hand, I think it's interviewing like the sales leader and the executive team. What are they looking for? What are their big objectives for the year? And where does sales dev fit into that? How is that team measured? Is it measured properly? And, I think the more people realize, before you take a leadership position, you're interviewing the leaders that you're going to be working with just as much as you taking on that new responsibility. I think the more you can get on the same page before you take the role, I think that's crucial. As I, have seen my team expand, and now some of those individuals are sales dev leaders elsewhere. And of course, if they're near me or I can meet with them, I do. That's the biggest thing that I see is there's just not that alignment into what, the roles and responsibility of sales development and also the measures. So, what do we think is success here? And are we both signing up for the same thing on the sales and marketing side, and how sales dev will participate? So I think it's very important that you're really, interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you for the role before you even get into the role. And that's what's going to make you more comfortable as you evolve as a leader.
100% is, as you get more comfortable, you get more confident in your skills. When you get more confident in your skills, you're willing to present yourself in the right way. So that kind of leads me into my next question, because I believe, especially from a sales development perspective, a lot of those leaders are young, like myself. When I was an SDR manager, I was only a year and a half out of college, and I was leading 13 people. So like that's a huge ask of someone. So my question is, for an upcoming young leader, how do you present yourself to the executive team so that they're confident in you and that you're not afraid?
Yeah. And I think sometimes that can come across the wrong way as overconfidence, like when you don't know your material. And I think they would, most executive team members are self-aware that you're a couple years out of school, that you're maybe an individual contributor that did well and they promoted you within, and they're willing to work with you. So I actually say show some vulnerability, right? They know where you stand in comparison to their experience level, and always seek to understand first. So as you come into as a leader in a new organization, working with new leaders, and leaders change, I always try to put my ego aside, what I know aside, and actually just seek to understand what are their goals for their team. What would they like to accomplish? How do they see our team helping them? And just really seeking to understand how your team can help. You do have to, of course, not be afraid to speak up and offer solutions.
Right.
But I think, first of all, it's just like in business school when you're handling a business case. What are the goals that you're trying to achieve? What's your plan? How are you going to measure it? And what's your time frame? So as I'm speaking with the executive, I know that they're always thinking in that way. And I always, if I don't know the answer, I think that's another important thing. If I don't know the answer, is to pause and say, let me ponder that and get back with you. And of course you want to get back with them timely, but you want to make sure that you're presenting yourself in the best light, that you have the information that you need from them and from others to present a plan that will work. So I think there's a lot of things there, right? It's like making sure you're seeking to understand, making sure that you have the information you need to show them that you can offer up solutions that could work.
Yeah. And that's a great point, because if you are in that role, a young leader, you probably have shown the confidence and you probably have shown the right skill set to get promoted in that position in the first place by the executives. And I think sometimes you can get overcompensated or over, confident that you got there, that you do come off and you say certain things that you shouldn't be saying because there's still a lot that you need to learn. So it is taking that time to ponder and really making sure that you're saying things at the right moment and not the wrong moment so you can get that right buy-in when you need to ask something of your team.
Yeah, and I think, Morgan, to that point, like it still happens to me daily, right? I'm not part of the EC. I'm not part of the executive team here at ReturnPath. I'm very important to ReturnPath, and they're very important to me. And so as I talk to an executive, and it may have been a month or two since I've talked with them directly, not our CMO, I speak to him often, our chief revenue officer, but the others. So I don't know all the meetings that they've been in, how they're looking at the business as they even consider, a few years out. And so as they ask me questions, I'm also sure to ask them questions to make sure that I'm really considering everything that they know. And oftentimes that leads them to tell me things that I can have on the horizon so I can better plan for the team and for the company.
That's also a really good point as well, is making sure that you know that you're valuable and that you can add those insights. And so you have direct reports, obviously. How are you making sure that you're keeping in contact with them, outside of work to make sure that relationship stays strong? And then how are you making sure that you're talking to other execs that may not be reporting directly to, but that you need their influence for maybe decisions on the line?
Yeah, I mean, luckily at ReturnPath, we have a very transparent culture. And so, I don't feel weird about messaging somebody on Google Hangout, giving them a call. Right. I just don't. And by the way, that also happens to me. I'll be at my desk and get a Google Hangout and I'll answer it immediately, right? And of course, I do work out on the floor with my team, so I always can step in somewhere private and have those discussions if need be. But I think it's just making sure that you're always accessible and not afraid to speak up and ask a question. So for example, our company president and founder, Matt Blumberg, he sends out a Friday email with what's going on. If I have a question there, I will speak up and ask or offer a suggestion.
Right, exactly.
And we also do a lot of things around management training. So, we do at least monthly management discussions. And it's important that you speak up in training sessions like that.
Is that internal?
It's internal only.
Okay.
We do oftentimes have outside guests that come in.
Okay.
So it would be like this podcast, right? But live in a panel.
Awesome.
And I think you just got to take advantage of those opportunities. And, for me, I think there's nothing more important than my one-on-ones. And so, I think as leaders get busier, bigger teams, making sure that you really stick to your one-on-ones and that you have something that works for your team members and yourself. So, my team, they fill out a weekly one-on-one doc, and we're always evolving it year over year. Is this really hitting on what we need to touch on?
Yeah.
Because it is a global team. We need our time together to allow them to ask the most important questions to me and me to understand exactly where they are on their business. Because as I get into, the executive discussion that we do bi-weekly, where we're presenting where our pipeline is by region, I actually need to know what each person is doing, what's working for them and what isn't. And so those one-on-ones are crucial to me to help, remove roadblocks and obstacles for them, and then speak up where we could be doing better.
No, those are all fantastic points across the board to make sure that people understand what's the perspective and how are you going to keep those continuous conversations going when maybe you feel like things are too busy. But I feel like the internal conversation, I feel like, is a very good thing that a lot of people can do to make sure that everyone's on the same page. And it kind of goes into my next question, which is, what are some tactics that you do when your team is going through a rough time? Because, those are things that you can do from a manager perspective to make sure everyone's on the same page and there's no cloudiness going on. But how do you do that from a leadership to now your team?
Yeah, Morgan, I really do think it comes back to the day-to-day. Like you should do whatever you can not to get in those storm situations. And when you do,
which are bad.
I was thinking about that and, as you were saying it, and I'm like, gosh, I do whatever I can to get ahead of that storm.
Yeah.
And that is without talking to people. And, my team, I haven't been on the phone in years, frankly. So they know sales dev just as much as I do. And I think understanding, set your ego aside, understand what's working in the marketplace, roll up your sleeve and get in the trenches. So not only do I do one-on-ones, but I do active coaching where I'm sitting side by side at their desk So I see how they're using the tools that we provide. So I'm seeing what challenges, what things slow them down, and what marketers are saying back to them as they present ReturnPath. So I think it's very important that you just make sure that you are that, as you know, a sales dev leader, you're a master communicator. You are trying to understand what the company is trying to do, how your team fits into it, and making sure that your team is set up for success so that they can achieve what the company needs. And that just takes a ton of communication and a ton of clarifying. And I think there is just really no better way than the day-to-day things that you do. And so there's things that we do from an executive standpoint where we have a 2-week check-in on pipeline, where we're going over exactly how salespeople are contributing, how we're contributing, and I'm answering any questions that the EC team has. And then we have, of course, regional director meetings by region. So I think, it's very important as sales devs has evolved that, I can speak to not only as how sales dev is doing globally, but by each region, each team, each sales rep. And if you can't get to that level, like you probably haven't done enough. It's that important. I really, my team considers we have 2 customers, right? We have prospects who are trying to educate on ReturnPath and salespeople. And so we care about every one of them. And, we really don't sleep well until everybody's doing well. And so that means that keeps us motivated every day. And so I really do believe, to go back to your original question, what do you do to weather the storm? It's things that you do every single day, that you're lockstep with the EC team and your sales leaders that you're supporting, and that you guys believe and have the roles and responsibilities defined for the team and the measures set up that people believe in. It is the coaching and training that you provide to get somebody successful as soon as possible and along the way. It's the engaged one-on-ones. Something that we do with my team is we do agile huddles. So every Monday and Wednesday, we start the day with a 15-minute huddle. And really it's about, on Monday, what's my plan of attack for the week? And I want to communicate that to the team. On Wednesday, what worked, what didn't work, right? Because we can still make adjustments before we go into Friday.
Right.
And also doing a retrospect, what worked for the month, what worked for the quarter. I think it's real easy in sales dev for people to sit alongside of each other. They're friends a lot of times. We build great team camaraderie, but they're not really sharing like what is working and what isn't best practices. They think they are, but they're not communicating in that way. So team meetings, agile huddles, things you can do to bring that out of people, to make sure that everybody is aware of how they could improve.
Yeah, and no one wants to be exposed. That's probably why they're not sharing maybe a failure that they had and that they did really well, or no one wants to give away their best secret because they're the number one performer and they don't want everyone else to be the number one performer. I understand that by being on a team. I get that. But also you also have to think about like, it's about sharing knowledge so that every single person on your team can win at a higher level, because what you're doing right now is what you're doing for your prospects, and that will just help someone else get prospects and help the entire team in the long run. And it really is a team effort that everyone needs to focus on. And I believe, one of the things that you can also do to help people through rough time is to get in the weeds with them. I got on the phones sometimes with my reps, and I would craft emails for my reps to show them that I knew what I was talking about, and I'm not just some random person talking, but to show them that there's action behind what I'm telling them to do. And I believe that also gets executive buy-in, because then the executives believe that you are a good leader, and also gets buy-in for your team as well.
Absolutely. And if you can't help them, somebody else can. So I think by doing your one-on-ones, I know that this person is really good at the relationship with their reps. This SDR is really struggling with their relationship with reps. Let me figure out what they're doing differently. Even though we have a good setup process for them, something is not registering through. So, that is where we got to get involved and help them. And it is the best when a person can figure out what's wrong themselves, right? Like, obviously, it would be easy for me to go in and diagnose, this is the exact 2 things you need to work on. But if you can help them uncover it themselves, and they believe if they work on that, they'll be successful, then, it's golden.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And also, let's talk about this question. How do you build credibility within your organization?
Yeah, I think, as I talk to the executive team, any leader here, I'm always thinking, as I think about like this year, right? Leading into this year, I'm always prepared with thinking about my business in the sense of people, process, and technology. So do I have the right number of people? Do I have the right people on, on the team, is everybody strategically aligned where they should be.
This is important, because if they're not aligned, then everyone's going to have miscommunication, then there's going to be problems.
Yeah, like as the sales team or other teams that you work with adjust, you also need to adjust your team to make sure that we have that cross collaboration we need to be successful. So, I look at people, I look at our process. Is it scalable? Is it flexible? Is it meeting the needs this year? Are we making adjustments by region? Because there is regional differences.
Right.
And then lastly, what technology? So I think it just goes back to that whole business plan, right? Like always being prepared. If an executive, and I probably got this from my exact target days, to be honest, because I had to be prepared when I was running, South regional marketing, and it's outbound plus regional marketing plus partner alliances. I had to be prepared. You have extra budget, you have 10 days to spend it. What are you going to do to fuel growth for next quarter? And that happened quite frequently. And so I learned from that scenario to always be prepared when you're speaking with an executive, what I would need to be able to do more.
Yeah. And I think that's super important. And, one thing that, my old boss used to tell me was that, it's super important to build your brand, but it's super important to build your brand internally and externally. So he said that your internal brand is important because how are people perceiving you in the office? Can they come to you with a problem or a challenge, knowing that you are going to be the person that can answer that, right? Mm-hmm. Do you have the right mind share within the organization that people come to you to solve their problems? And that's really building credibility across the organization, guys. Because if you can focus on, hey, how do building your brand, obviously that's important. And I've talked about that before, but building your brand internally with your organization is going to pay off for you so much in the long term, because there are going to be more people who are going to invest into you, and they're going to give you challenges that will help you grow as an individual.
Yeah. Morgan, this is funny, but like a little simple thing that we did at our holiday party 2 years ago is we did like nominations within our office. So within our Indy office, okay, obviously cool. ReturnPath's a big global company, yeah, but I had won by the team, by the people based in this office, the People Award. And so they're like, this is the person that greets everybody, that's hobnobbing, that making sure if anyone needs anything, they're there. It sounds silly. It's just a piece of paper and a couple people clapping for you, but that award meant the most to me. And it's because I really do work hard. And I think others, you got to figure out your style and what works for you. But for me, like going into the break room, making sure I'm talking with salespeople one-on-one, what's working for them, what's not. That'll make me so much more approachable. They won't just see me as a leader or as a manager, and they'll come to me if they're having an issue with their SDR. They know that I care about them. I care about that SDR. And, in the end, I want the company to be successful. And so I think for me, it's always making sure when I interview people, I'm getting them to let their guard down. Gotcha. Internally, I'm getting people to let their guard down so that they can be as direct and as frank with me to understand what keeps them up at night. How can we help? How can we do better? And that way I can go to them when I need things. So I think, as we talked about this topic and like what this podcast could be, that's a lot of the things I researched. We've gotten really, in the, 10 or 15 years that sales dev has evolved, really into metrics and numbers, but not a lot on like, what makes people good leaders in sales dev and, how could they do better? Yeah.
And that's important because sales development is, as I said in the beginning, it is the center point of the organization. It's the pipeline of the organization. I think I made a comment on a status the other day, and I said that, your sales development team is the pipeline and almost the heart of the organization, because it's where your pipeline is going to be contributed to your closers, account executives, or whatever, inside sales reps, whatever you're calling them at your organization, the closers. And also it's a feeder program into your leadership and also other positions in the organization, as in marketing. It could be customer success. You got to really think about how are you treating the SDRs and making sure that you're putting them in the right spotlight. So kind of goes into my next question, which is, how do you handle situations when the executive team is not willing to buy into the SDR team?
Yeah, I think as I came over to ReturnPath, right, I obviously interviewed with everybody up front, like I said, made sure everybody was on the same page, that I'm joining a company that I believe in and leaders that will work with me, right? Because I know it's not going to be easy to build this thing.
Of course not.
And what it took me 8 years basically did overnight, right, within 6 months. So, I think with that, then you start producing the numbers, and then the numbers are real. And so as you go through that, I think it's just important that, you know, even though those meetings are difficult, you stay on them, you're prepared, you're showing what your team is doing, and then where those deals are going and what challenges are happening along the way. So you really got to dig in as a sales dev leader and not just worry about, you know, my team produced this much and this happened. We actually have to know and be able to speak to data on what happened with those deals and, you know, where we're having challenges on our end passing to sales and what's going on from there. So I think the more credibility you can build on that end, I mean, I think most sales leaders are attuned enough to know like that insight to them is very valuable and usually resonates with other data that they're seeing, and it is very helpful. So, you know, I think that, you know, most importantly is you really have to know your numbers. And that may mean, you know, I'm sure when you were a sales dev later, you don't have all the data that you need. And so it may mean me at night building trend analysis, right? And building like, you know, where is this metric getting better and where is it scorecard by people? You know, as I talk to sales leaders, they want to make sure I'm looking at my team just like a sales organization is. And so how is each team member doing? And so I think it is just that, just making sure that you know your business. And I would say this, like my, you know, 20 years of management, I do feel lucky in the sense that I had managed people before.
Right.
I was an individual contributor and got in this role. I know that there's a lot I learned along the way and a lot of transferable skills, but in dealing with people in general at any level, executive, within the team, you know, a peer, like perception is reality. So, you know, if I'm a good person and you believe I'm doing good work and I'm there for the right reasons, why would I be bringing up something that, you know, I didn't believe in? So that is that person's truth. And so I think a lot of it is just setting your emotion aside. You know, you built this team from scratch. It's your baby. Everything's trending up. And yet, you know, people have problems. What's going on? I think it's setting your ego aside and your emotion aside and saying, why do they think that? Let me ask them. Let's have a real conversation. Why do you feel that way? What do you feel we could do better? And being able to have those difficult conversations are really important. You know, along with that, assuming goodwill, right? I believe that leader, that person, that peer is coming from a good place. So, you know, let's work on this issue together. Maybe it's my issue and I'm not communicating with them enough. Maybe there is some situations on my team that I was unaware of. So I think it's really about like making sure that if you believe in your coworkers, assume goodwill, and perception is reality. So you may have to work on adjusting that perception, but you're a part of it.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I remember the reports that I had to build to try to figure out what the heck metrics I was going to address to somebody. So yeah, no, I completely there on that boat. And as you build out these metrics, you actually end up getting buy-in for your sales development team. Why is the team dynamic and support important for that sales development team as you continue to grow it out?
Yeah. So, you know, I've learned the hard way, right? You probably have as a manager too. You hire somebody maybe too quickly. Maybe there were connections and resources you could have went to get further references on that person. And, you know, you're in a time crunch and you're like, they came in referred, this is good. They match, you know, the skills I'm looking for, and you hire that person. And then team dynamics start taking place. And so anytime you're bringing a team member in, it can affect the whole team and also your reputation in the company in, you know, with the salespeople and with prospects. So I think that it's just so important to be picky and to be very diligent in who you hire and make sure that they're not only a fit for the role, Morgan, because you brought this up. You know, I'm always touting how many people have been promoted into sales, into other positions within the company.
Right.
And I think that position, you know, total responsibility, right? I'm trying to hire somebody that's going to be the best person of the candidates for this role and that can contribute the most, and also who can grow onward with ReturnPath. And I think, you know, that's why people want to come to your team. If you can share those stories about if that person builds their brand, right, internal. Yeah. And if they perform well and have a good network, there's going to lead to all kinds of opportunities, hopefully within the company, but they'll also have opportunities outside the company.
Awesome. Well, Christy, thank you so much for the value and insight that you provided on this episode today. The final question I ask every single person that comes on the interview: what is your number one piece of advice that you give to reps as they enter into their new roles?
Oh my gosh, one piece of advice. I didn't even know you asked this. So one piece of advice I will leave it with my theme for today, which is seek to understand.
Seek to understand. It's kind of, that's deep. That's deep though, when you really think about it. Like, that's really deep.
Yeah, because it could be your rep, it could be a prospect, it can be anyone you're communicating with, right? It's like making sure that you understand what they're talking about. And if you don't, ask questions, right? That's how you can do better and grow.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Christy, for hopping on the episode of the SDR Chronicles. As I always say, guys, keep dialing, and I'll see you guys soon.